Happy Monday, everyone. We are excited to have you on with us today. For those who are new to the show and tuning in for the first time, I'm Jamie Fries-Miller. I am a health coach here at MassCell 360, and we would love to know where you're tuning in from. If you are watching the replay or joining us live, drop in the comments and let us know where you are so that we can really see how widespread this community of ours is. Today, we are doing another practitioner panel on the topic of supporting digestion and gut motility. So you are in for a treat. We have all of our practitioners here with us today. All right, just our quick disclaimers. This show is for informational and educational purposes. It's not meant to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent illness. So be sure to discuss any recommendations with your healthcare provider. And an affiliate reminder, some of the links that we share during this presentation or on our website are affiliate links, which means MassCell 360 may take a very small commission if you purchase through our links. We only recommend products that we love and use personally or use in the MassCell 360 clinic. There's never any extra cost to you, and the commissions that we do get help support our newsletter, the website, ongoing research, and also this show. So we thank you so much if you do choose to support us. All right, we will do a Q&A and a giveaway today. The Q&A, if we have time, we'll take some questions live. If we don't have time, we're going to continue the conversation on digestion and gut health next week. So be sure to tune in for that as well. And if you do have a question, please keep it on topic for the Facebook Live. So share your question only one time. We have Cam behind the scenes keeping an eye on those to help us stay organized. But if you write your question multiple times, it's harder for us to stay organized. So please keep it on topic to digestion and gut health. And at the end, we will announce one winner. You get to choose which course you want, either our basic mold, our nervous system reboot, or the top 8. You must be present to win and commenting so that we know that you are here. All right, so today's show, like I said, we have all of our practitioners, lead practitioner Alex Bingham, Kimberly Quirk, and our emotional support coach, Elle. And we, if you are not familiar with our practitioners, 2 months ago in December, go check out the live we did then because we did introduce everyone, but also if you go to masscell360.com/application, you will find our bios all there. So you can learn a little bit more about us. Again, that's masscell360.com/application. You'll find our bios there. All right, so let's jump in. We're going to be talking about digestive system, common gut issues with mast cell activation syndrome, digestive and motility supports, and again, the Q&A if time allows. So I'm going to bring Alex Bingham up, and we are going to move forward.
Am I on?
You are on, Alex. Welcome.
Okay. Thanks, Jamie. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. I'm kind of excited today. I think that the digestive system is just an amazing thing, that it just does so much. It just brings everything in that we need. And I'll be talking briefly about these different areas of the digestive system, as well as the eyes and the nose, which we call the cephalic stage. So it starts even before you eat a lot of times. Slide. So in terms of the eyes and the nose, just seeing food can stimulate your appetite. It prepares your body for digestion by helping to secrete saliva. And the saliva starts moistening your mouth, your nose, same thing, increases your saliva, but now also starts, some digestive enzymes coming. And then you put the food in your mouth. So several things are happening here. You're breaking your food down into small pieces, more easily digested, and your chewing mixes the saliva. It gets it moist and somewhat liquefied. The digestive enzymes start the digestive process mostly by digesting the starches, simple starches. So Why don't we go to the next? Oh, this, I just wanted one thing. We can stay here. But one thing is that this is guided by the vagus nerve. So vagus nerve is operating even up at this level. Slide. The esophagus is a tube that goes from your mouth down to your stomach, and it operates by the muscle that's inside the lining. It creates peristalsis, which is how things are moved. Now, it's like if you squeeze a hose and you just kind of push it forward. That's how stuff moves through your whole system. And whether that goes fast, slow, or the right speed will determine a lot of the problems that can happen. There's an upper sphincter, which is kind of your epiglottis, which keeps the food from going into your trachea and into your lungs. And then the lower esophageal sphincter, which is right at the top of the stomach. And basically, it's kind of weak. So that's where it's weak. Sometimes you'll see reflux and things like that. And it's supposed to prevent the backflow of stomach acid. In terms of the stomach, a lot of stuff happening here. The stomach, basically the muscles of the stomach are contracting, and they're very powerful. They're about 100 millimeters of mercury, which is kind of like halfway to the top part of where they pump up a blood pressure cuff. So you can see that it's pretty strong. And it's churning and mixing and breaking it down, and it's forcing everything to kind of move toward the bottom of the stomach so it can empty. Meanwhile, all the gastric juices are in there, which are the stomach acid, the enzymes, and you make about between 1 and 2.5 liters of gastric juices every day. And they're breaking down the food. You're storing the food until you can release it into the intestine, and things are released gradually. Things like liquids, they would go almost right through, very little digestion. But, depending on how much stomach acid you have, it might take quite a while for that digestion to occur. And things might hang out a lot longer in your stomach, which can increase reflux coming back up. Fatty foods take a little bit longer, but an average sized meal takes about 2 hours to come out. And then there's nutrient absorption in the stomach. This would include water, simple sugars like glucose, a few of the amino acids, fat-soluble chemicals, like if you took some aspirin or you drank some alcohol, and vitamin B12 are all absorbed in the stomach. Slide. Now, the small intestine, to me, this is the most impressive part of the digestive system. It's 20 feet long, and the food comes bounding in here with a very high acid content. So it's immediately neutralized with baking soda, which comes from the pancreas. And the first section, which is called the duodenum, is really the active part for really the secretion of enzymes into the small intestine. And they will come in through the common bile duct. So all the stuff from the liver and gallbladder are coming down, the pancreas meets it, and then it comes in to the small intestine. And we're talking about bile, we're talking about many different pancreatic enzymes, and there's a lot going on here. Now, as this digestion is happening, as things are moving down, you want to be absorbing things. And this is where the primary absorption happens in the small intestine. And so it's about 90%. And much of it is in the first part of the duodenum, less as things move along. So you've neutralized the stomach acid. You've got your pancreatic enzymes, which are your proteases for protein, lipases for fats, amylases for starches. And things are moving down, plus the bile, which emulsifies the fat, which is hard to digest in a big glob because it will tend to be a big glob, but it just kind of breaks it up. And it's a huge surface area. And that's because of these tiny finger-like villi, which kind of stick up into the intestine. And if you stretched out that surface area, it'd be about the size of a tennis court. You can see that there's a huge area for absorption, but there's also a huge area for injury. And that's where leaky gut would come in, which is something we probably won't talk about too much today, but leaky gut happens in the intestines. Most of your nutrients are absorbed here, like I said, about 95%, and about 80% of the intestinal fluid, about 7 liters a day. The peristalsis moves through the intestines, but there's also another part, which is the migrating motor complex. It's very interesting. When you're not eating, every 90 to 120 minutes, there are these waves of peristalsis, which will take the waste products, bacteria, food that hasn't been digested, and starts moving it to the colon. And that's called the migrating motor complex, which is going to be a little bit deficient in people that graze all day or people that have SIBO. But it is very important to clean out the small intestine. Now, the bile is mostly, the bile will form bile salts, and your toxins and a lot of your waste products are bound up in this mass of bile salts. And most of those bile salts are going to be absorbed at the end of the small intestine. A small amount will continue going, and that's where your toxins are going to move out, okay? Some toxins are able to come in at that point with the bile salts, like your mold toxins, and that makes it very hard to lose them without some kind of active process. And I think we can move on.
Yeah, we have a few questions that are coming in specific to this topic, so I figured we could throw them up there.
Okay.
So as long,
what if you don't have a gallbladder? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. Let's talk about that when we get down to the gallbladder and the liver, because I think they connect very well.
Great idea. Okay, Linda, we will bring you back and get you that answer. All right.
Okay, large intestine. So you got about 20% of the fluid is coming into the large intestine. And one of the major functions of the large intestine is to reabsorb most of that fluid so that you don't have like massive amounts of diarrhea. Okay, it's going to be taking electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium, and things like that. And it's going to consolidate your undigested food matter with a lot of the bacteria. Much of it's dead, and that's what forms your feces. Now, in your large intestine is about 95% of your total body microbiome. It's just a huge amount, trillions and trillions of germs. 10 times as many germs as there are cells in your body. And so they're breaking down some of the nutrients that remain. They're producing some vitamins like vitamin K, biotin, which is a B vitamin, and they do a lot more, okay? They produce the nutrients for the lining of the gut called butyrate. And they have a huge impact on your brain. It sends messages up into the brain via the vagus nerve. And we're just beginning to understand the function of this. It's about 3 or 4 pounds. It's like an organ by itself. And the thing that's even more interesting is that everyone's is unique. Everything that happens to you in life is going to impact your microbiome. So were you born vaginally, or did you have a C-section? Were you bottle fed? Were you breastfed? Did you ever have antibiotics? Did you ever have food poisoning? Did you ever have stomach flu? What kind of medications have you been on? All these things will impact what your microbiome is. And then the last part of the large intestine is that you're going to store the waste in the rectum. And if you've got bad constipation, it can go up the descending colon in the sigmoid until it's eliminated. And bowel movements are one of the main ways of removing these toxins. As a matter of fact, it's interesting that the lining of the rectum, which is we call mucosa, is one of the best absorbing surfaces in the body. So very easy for constipation to cause toxins to just get reabsorbed. And there you are all over again. Slide. So here we can talk about the question, what if you don't have a gallbladder? So the liver is going to be creating bile. It's going to start coming down the bile duct, and most of it's going to take a very sharp turn and go up and be stored in the gallbladder. And it's just waiting for the meal and the stimulation to squeeze that out. It's going to get rid of a lot of the liquid, so it's concentrated, and that bile is going to go into the small intestine to emulsify the fats. Now, if you don't have the gallbladder, you're just going to be leaking bile into the small intestine all the time. So there will be some, but it's fairly common for people to need some support. And that's where some of the supplements like ox bile, their taurine you can use bile salts. There are a lot of supplements to help people who don't have a gallbladder and need more bile. The liver does a lot more too. It metabolizes and stores a lot of your nutrients. All the blood that goes through the intestines, all the nutrients that go through the intestines and are into the bloodstream, they all go through the liver before they go out to the rest of the body. That means that all your drugs that are absorbed through the lining of the gut are going to go through your liver as well. And they can be metabolized. They can do all kinds of things. And the liver is like the trash can of your body. It's going to be absorbing. It's going to be collecting all the toxins and wastes and things that you're producing, or drugs that you need to get rid of, or toxins that have come in from the outside. It's going to process them and put them into the bile. It's incredible what's happening there. Slide.
Yeah, one more question, because you mentioned like the supplements that can help if you don't have the gallbladder. So Rose is asking, how do you know if you need an ox bile supplement?
Well, that's a really good question, because you don't really measure this. You can tell by how you feel after you eat. Okay, like let's say that you eat and you notice that you just feel kind of nauseous after you eat fatty foods. Well, that's what the bile is really focused on, is the fat. So that's one way that you might notice. You might notice if your stools float. Okay, well, there's more fat in a floating stool than there is in another kind of stool. That's another way you might tell that you're not digesting your fats and you need something like ox bile. Jamie, do you want to add anything else to that?
Sorry, guys. Yeah, so my perspective has been the same, like the floating stools, like how much support do you need? And some people might not need just, the ox bile and fat support. They may have trouble, with all the other enzymes. And so like figuring out and working with a practitioner who knows kind of how to evaluate that, rather than just spending a ton of money on supplements that may or may not work for you, I think is kind of the best approach, is having that supportive person on the side.
I think that's an important point, because oftentimes we'll read on the internet, someone will say, oh, I've got this problem, and it was the ox bile that really took care of it. And boy, you can get so much great stuff off the internet. But because it's so unfiltered, you might be oversimplifying something that's very complex. So like this, okay, here's a huge part of what's going on in the digestion is what the pancreas does. I mentioned before, the three macronutrient enzymes, the amylase, the lipase, and the protease. But there are little cells within the pancreas that secrete insulin, gastrin, glucagon, so other hormones. And it helps to regulate the intestinal acidity with the baking soda. It also influences motility and peristalsis. It produces cholecystokinin, which will cause the chyme, which is this kind of the material that comes out of the stomach, to be very fluidy and easy to move. Slide. So these are just a few of the gut issues that you could see with MCAS. And the SIBO, for people that might not be familiar with that, it's small intestinal fungal overgrowth. So can be candida. It can be this mold colonization that we see in other people. The SIBO, the gut imbalances, the leaky gut, which is oftentimes an end product of all these injurious things that have happened to people, including celiac and malabsorption. You see that in celiac a lot. The gastroparesis, where things just sit in the stomach forever, and then you might have very slow motility, so you're not really moving things down. Chronic diarrhea, chronic constipation. There are many more. And one of the problems we see come from oxalates, which are crystals that can be absorbed into the tissues of the body. And it's kind of like shards of glass. And so there's a lot of pain associated with that. It could be pain with bowel movements, it could be pain in the gut, but it could be pain in muscles and joints and other parts of the body too. One of the bigger things that we see in our clients. Slide. And just to end for my part, there are so many symptoms that you can see here from things that are happening in the gut. And you can put together little groups of these things. So gas, bloating, and belching, to me, well, this could be stomach acid, not enough stomach acid. The burning, well, that could be mast cell activation. If it's heartburn, it could be that there's reflux, either too much acid or not enough acid. And just there are just so many different constellations of symptoms that give you little clues to what might be going on. That's it.
Yeah, thank you for that great overview, Alex. I feel like with mast cell activation syndrome, the spectrum of symptoms is so wide, but we see gut issues like in almost everyone, I would say. It's very rare for someone to come through the clinic that doesn't have some level of gut symptoms. And, there's over 100 people on this call today. And the fact that you guys showed up for this, like, tells us that this is like an important topic that you guys want to hear more about. So, Alex, thank you for sharing that overview. Do you have anything to add here before we move on?
No, I mean, I could talk forever, but I think I've said my piece.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess there's one more. Oh, no, that's the next slide.
Yeah, no, this is your last slide if you wanted to talk more about it.
Okay.
But yeah, we definitely see that, like, once the gut's disrupted, everything else, like the malabsorption, and I have celiac disease and I ate gluten for 21 years, and the destruction of my gut, right? Just like symptoms just start adding up once the gut kind of goes, is kind of my personal experience.
And I think this bottom line is really important. That 70% of your entire immune system is located in the gut, primarily in the small intestine. And I mean, I guess that's what happens when you evolve without refrigeration. Imagine what our ancestors were eating 5,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago. And so it has a huge impact on your immune system.
Yeah, definitely. My background's in anthropology, for those who don't know that about me. And so, like, I look at how, like, humans evolved biologically and how we're kind of like at a mismatch in our modern environment to like how we are biologically. And a lot has changed in a short amount of time, external, but internally we're pretty much the same. And so, so the modern environment can really play a big role. And that immune system piece is really huge, because one of the biggest triggers we see at Mast Cell 360 is that mold piece, and what mold can really do to the gut and the immune system. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, Alex. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we see mold, right, as that number one root cause in Mast Cell 360. And so playing into like the piece about stabilization. So over 95% of people that come in to the Mast Cell 360 clinic have mold toxicity, some level of it, whether it's in recent exposure and it's more acute versus past exposure and mold colonization. And in order to get to the point of being able to detox that mold, what we've realized is there has to be a level of stabilization first. And this is what makes Mast Cell 360 and the MC 360 method an approach different than a lot of other practitioners who are working with clients, whether it's mold toxicity or just autoimmune conditions, right? That functional approach. We're a little bit different in that we spend a lot of time on that stabilization piece. We specialize in mast cell activation syndrome. You don't have to have a diagnosis to come and work with our practitioners, but that stabilization piece is what makes us different. So our method focuses on stabilizing those mast cells so that you can actually detox in a way that's going to be gentle and not react those mast cells even more. And so because today's focus is on the gut, I want to talk a little bit about why we work on stabilization and gentle detox before we focus on some of those gut issues. So if you've tried SIBO protocols, you've tried Candida protocols, they haven't worked in the past, it may be because you haven't addressed stabilizing the mast cells or actually getting the mold out of the way. And, there's this picture of the guy throwing the trash, right? Every time what we eliminate, right, if we're doing an active mold detox, we're pulling that mold out of the stored tissues and it's going through our digestive system and essentially trashing our gut every time. So there's going to be a level of gut disruption when someone has mast cell activation syndrome, when there's mold toxicity. And so we really have to stabilize, make sure you're having daily bowel movements so that you can use those binders to attract the mycotoxins and pull them out of the system so that those toxins are not getting reabsorbed. So if you have constipation, you're not going to the bathroom every day, you're not ready to, get those binders on board. And this is where, again, that stabilization piece comes in, because your part of digestion is connected to the autonomic nervous system. And so in stabilization, getting those nervous system pieces in place is really going to be supportive for you to be able to move on to those next steps. So I'm going to bring up Elle to the stage. Elle is our emotional support coach. Welcome. And she's going to go over how the enteric nervous system really affects this digestion and, the gut-brain axis. So I'm going to turn it over to her now. Elle, you're muted, so we can't hear you. It's okay. I did it earlier.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Jamie. Hope everyone's having a good morning. I want to go through a few things about how our gut and brain are connected and the different ways that it impacts us and some ways that we can support ourselves through that process, empowered through that awareness. So we have the first slide here. And so yes, we have the enteric nervous system. So it sounds like we have a lot of nervous systems, right? So we have the CNS, our control system, our ANS that we talk a lot about, that modulates what's going on as our adaptive system, our response system that we want to have in a healthy place when possible, or be able to go in and out of it with ease. But as we adapt, it makes it a little more challenging. And that's where we end up with chronic illness. And so this is to help us better understand the relationship with the different part of our nervous system. Our heart has its own nervous system, our gut does too. And so with our enteric nervous system, it is the connection directly the brain to the nerves to the gut. It innervates our gut, and it manages our muscle control and sensory processing. And it's related to the feeding and gut function that we have. And it's a very important process, something that just happens automatically normally. But as we know, with survival responses, it can interrupt that process. So some of the functions that it has in our gut is related to muscle contractions. It moves our food through our intestines, which can be quite long if you've never ever looked into that. And it does this automatically. It does this without having to send information even back to our brain before acting. And let's see, but at the same time, it still communicates back and forth. And so we do have the gut-brain axis, which is important. You've probably heard of it related to taking probiotics and other supplements, managing your microbiome and things like that. And so here we want to look at about the relationship, basically. And so as we know, the vagus nerve is what communicates important information. Getting over some illness here. And it does this through multiple ways, actually. We want to focus on mainly with the nervous system, but it also does this with our endocrine system, which is our glands, thyroid, pituitary glands, all of that. And it also communicates through our immune cells with our immune system. But today we want to focus on the gut. And so the wisdom, intelligence of the enteric nervous system is that it processes our sensations, and it also integrates information with input from the autonomic nervous system. So as we have a threat that we experience, so related to animals, basically in the wild, the way they respond to a threat is it shuts down their automatic systems that they don't need in the moment. They're not going to stop to eat. They don't need to digest, so it stops it. And they run and they focus all their energy and adrenaline on getting to safety. And so that's one way it communicates. It also communicates safety, where we can relax and we can digest. And so this is one of the important functions as related to that. And let's see. So within that, there's also there's perceived threats as well. We get associations, and that can impact us too. So sometimes there's not a real threat around us, but we have something going on that we're worried about. We may not even be aware of it. And that can actually disrupt that process too. It's actually shutting it down through that adaptive response. And one of the ways, or some of the ways that it can impact is with stomach upset, nausea, even changes in muscle tension, guarding, holding. If you ever notice, like you stop and slow down, you notice that maybe you're extra tense and you kind of need to relax a little bit, that can be part of that. And this is important in part because we actually need like automatic muscle responses basically through our digestive tract. And so that involves our abdomen and throat, as Alex was explaining earlier. And if that gets disrupted, that impacts our digestive process. And then there are some other things at play sometimes even. So if we missed milestones, if there's certain things called reflexes that don't integrate as we're doing movement through early development, we get injuries, we have a long period of inactivity, we get deconditioned, then this actually can impact our brain-body connection. And it can impact our automatic movements. So this can also impact with our muscles and our digestion as well. And it also impacts the safety of our brain too, like how it feels safe. Does it feel like we can relax? If we think we're safe, but our body is telling us we're not, our brain isn't going to believe that it's safe. And so that's some of the things that we would work on together, is to help reprogram to understand how, when we are safe, and then to better sense when we're not. And so we can distinguish those things instead of having more on the not safe side. So that's part of the sensitivity that we can get, sensory sensitivity. It can impact food, a whole range of things. And so we would be working on that. And then the next slide, I'm going to go through a solution. It's just one step of many things, but we don't have that one. That's fine. So this is just our solution, basically. And there's a lot more. It's also really important to work on activating your abdomen muscles, a whole range of muscles that are part of the process to keep you stable, and actually keeps you well connected with your brain and gut. And so there's this physiological aspect to it. And then there is just the nervous system regulation aspect to it. And how do you feel safe? Are you able to slow down and have awareness about what's going on so that you can respond the way it's needed, and you can actually slow down when you need to slow down. You can digest the way that your body is made to digest. And so one exercise you can do is basically a embodied body exercise. You can incorporate it just for practice once a day. You can do it before meals. That would be a really great time. And then in time, if you get stressed, you can employ some aspect of it. And so, and you're welcome to do this right now if you like, or just note some of the ideas from it. But it's just if you're seated, you notice your breath. You notice when you breathe in your nose, just naturally, don't force it or anything. If you just notice, are you breathing from your chest or into it? Or are you breathing through your abdominal muscles? If you're able to, you can just put your hand there and that can kind of help guide you. And you can shift to where you're just gently to where you're breathing from, at least your abdominal muscles or even where you feel seated. And this process can help you. It doesn't have to be something you sit in a long time. You don't have to notice a whole lot of things. Sometimes if it's new for you, it may be, a bit much to take it all in. But if you just can shift to where it's more of a natural process, then that actually improves your communication from your upper and lower body. And that helps with integration and communication. So, and then as you do this, it's an opportunity to pause and notice where you might want to shift, where you can even breathe into it. So you can bring in more stability by noticing that part. And also where you might need to relax a little. And then you can also pause to see, this can be a lot, but you can do it in steps. You can pause to see what your thoughts and emotions might be at that time too. And if just notice it without judgment, and just if judgment comes up, bring it back to ask yourself what the actual need is. And there's an intelligence even from your gut that can help you through that process. And through doing that, it's kind of a form of emotional digestion. Instead of taking the automatic things that come up, the associations, how it's impacting your body, you can actually start to slow down, kind of simmer with what's going on, and help shift to something that's more accurate, sense what's real in that process. So you don't have to do all of that every time you sit down to eat, but it's something that you can do aspects of, at least to relax and to get to where you can digest your food better and hopefully digest your emotions better as well. And it's not something that's immediate, but it's a practice you can build on, and it's an investment in yourself.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That belly breath, I do it with my son, and I tell him to pretend that he has like a boat. His hand's a boat. So I make him put his hand up so he actually like feels it. And I'm like, okay, now breathe in so that the boat goes up. So he like makes that association with like where in his body the breath should be. And so, for anyone on today who has kids and, maybe they have their own digestive issues, and, what can you do to support yourself and your kid? Like taking that pause before any meal as a family and just doing like a few of those belly breaths can be really impactful. All right. Elle, thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to bring Kim up now. All right. Kimberly, welcome to the stage. I'm going to get your slide geared up here.
Yeah.
Kimberly's going to share us a little bit more about dietary and lifestyle supports.
So yeah, you guys heard a lot about the digestive system and about the, a lot of understanding what's going on, but, what are the next things and what can we do, right? What can we do? How do we implement, and how do we support our digestive tract? So definitely there's a lot you can do. Lifestyle support. So one huge thing is just slowing down when you're eating. I know just culturally, we tend to eat faster. We're always in a rush. Can you sit down to eat, not eating in the car, slowing down, taking the time. We should enjoy our food. So smelling your food, starting those, thinking about that as you're eating, did you smell your food? Did you taste your food? And that starts all those enzymes working. Chewing your food thoroughly. I say this all the time. Our stomach doesn't have teeth. So it's really, really important that we use those teeth to break things down. So it makes it easier for the rest of your digestive tract to digest everything. And then just eating mindfully. So trying not to go into it rushed and trying to get through to get the thing done? Can you enjoy your meals more? So that's how we're designed to digest. Some other things you can do is add a little bit of bitter greens, make maybe some arugula or some dandelion greens or something like that. Or you can even get tinctures if you more want to supplement, that can start getting those juices going. Some things that you can do if your stomach is upset or you're in a mast cell flare, you can blend and cook your foods a lot better. So rather than eating raw foods that are hard to digest, maybe you're eating foods that are well cooked. Even some do better with pureed and smoothies and things like that, especially if you're in a flare. Some other things you can do, obviously, we always talk about doing low histamine diet, great place to start with mast cell, and identifying if you have any other food intolerances going on, because those can kind of keep us stuck in that flare. And that's what we do in the clinic, at least, try to evaluate, is there something else going on that this person is holding that person back and keeping that gut and that body reacting all the time. And then some other things to think about is meal timing. You don't want to go too long between eating. I know intermittent fasting is huge, but maybe know who you are, right? And it's probably okay for some, but if your body is more in a stress response, and that stress cortisol needs to come down, thinking about eating and well nourishing your body is huge. So rather than fast, it's probably not the time to fast because you're creating more stress. But thinking about timing of meals, portion, how well you're digesting. So maybe smaller portion or what you're eating, and sort of thinking that through a little bit. It all depends on who you are. So another huge one is, eating at least 3 hours before going to bed is huge. This is a good rule of thumb for anyone, but especially with mast cell, right, where some of the histamine responses and things like that can be more likely if you eat closer to bedtime, or more reflux and things like that if things haven't cleared the stomach. As Alex was saying, that that flap isn't really super secure, right? So things can kind of come up. Drinking plenty of clean water every day. The goal, we always say, is half your body weight in ounces of water. And warm liquids count too, especially if you're having herbals and broths and things like that. And a small cup of ginger dandelion tea can help you with digestion, because that gives you some of those bitters or digestive supports. And there's a good note there. If you are someone who is salicylate intolerant, going for the dandelion root tea is your better option there. Gentle exercise or movement after your meal, like taking a short walk. So thinking about doing that, it could even be around your house, right? Or it could be to the mailbox. So if you're sort of limited, vagus nerve stimulation can help. Gentle vagus nerve stimulation, I should say. One tool we like is Resimax, which is a vagal stimulator that we use a lot in clinic, just because it's more gentle for those mast cell. Or some of the vagal nerve exercises by, if you ever look up Stanley Rosenberg in The Healing Power of the Vagus Nerve, great book. He has some great exercises in the back of that. And then we just also recommend working with someone who's knowledgeable, especially if you have multiple food intolerances and you tried some of these things and you're not getting where you need to be. It's a good idea to get some guidance, especially if you're someone who's down to a few foods. We like people to hold on to their foods and not to lose a lot of foods.
Yeah, and I just threw up, someone's asking if we work with people remotely. So we actually only work with people remotely. So in the beginning of today's call, I mentioned our application page. You can find out more about how to work with us. And I want to remind everyone who's on the call today to stick around to the end, because we have some really exciting news about our clinic and how you actually can work with us. We're opening it up to be able to work with a wider group of people than we have in the past. So stick around to hear our exciting announcement. But yes, it doesn't matter where you are to be able to work with us, because we're a remote clinic. So
we talked about the lifestyle piece. Now this is more the supplement piece. So what are some things you can do to help digestion? The large intestine, you want to pull water in to keep kind of things moving. One of our favorite ways to do that is magnesium oxide. We avoid magnesium citrate because it's high histamine. We like magnesium oxide. Vitamin C can also help with this. But for vitamin C, I want to add there magnesium ascorbate is the preferred one for mast cell, because a lot of the others like ascorbic acid and such are fermented and can cause reactions. So working on your motility, Alex was talking about those villi moving. How can we help support that? Because sometimes things are slowed down. So I know Al talked a bit about how we can do with the nervous system, but what are some supplements that may help? So 5-HTP is a supplement that may help. It's a precursor for serotonin. Serotonin is made in your gut and supports motility. And then another is motility activator, which includes ginger and artichoke heart and some things like that. And then you can always talk to your practitioner about certain medications that may support motility if some of these other things are not enough, and sometimes you need a little bit more. But make sure you don't miss the nervous system piece, because I do see this often in clinic where they're doing all the functional medicine side, but they haven't touched the nervous system piece. And if your body is in like a dorsal vagal state, which is more of a shutdown, a freeze, we call it freeze, the gut isn't moving. The gut really is struggling to move because that vagal nerve really does control the speed of that digestion. So make sure, if you've only looked at one side or the other, make sure you're looking at both sides. And that's why we always say, it's mast cell is the nervous system plus the mold toxicity or toxicity piece. So what are some of the specific supplements that we use in clinic? These are some of our favorite ones that we use. If you tolerate, always good to start really small with new supplements and start one at a time. I always like to say that. But holozyme is a really great digestive enzyme or pancreatic enzyme, which helps you break down the food better. If you're breaking down, you're absorbing more nutrients. You're leaving less particles for the bad microbes further down to feed them. And you're just helping yourself nutritionally break that down and absorb more nutrients. HCl guard increases acidity in the stomach. It really helps break down especially protein. So if you're having trouble breaking down protein, which happens in the stomach, and your acid tends to be low, sometimes it looks like high acid, but it's actually low acid, HCl guard can be super helpful for that. And then Tributyrin X helps. It's a butyrate supplement that helps more the large intestine. It helps the small intestine as well, but it helps repair and strengthen the gut. I like to think of it as a terrain changer for people. And it doesn't have, I get some results with it overnight personally, but usually you don't see super quick results. But it's something you take over time to kind of really reshape the gut. And then Histo Harmony DAO. So DAO is what breaks down histamine. And Histo Harmony DAO is a really great form of DAO. So we want to also support the mast cells, right? So if we're supporting those mast cells, we're going to have a less inflamed gut, less reactivity, better nutrient absorption, better immune functioning, support your detox, support your healing. And then people ask this a lot because we talk about Pepsid as a H2 blocker for mast cells. So can that cause problems long-term? Generally, Pepsid is a short-term acting medicine. Famotidine, if you're living internationally, is what we're talking about. What about PPIs? So the PPIs are proton pump inhibitors. That sort of shuts down the acid production. That's usually one we try to have people avoid or kind of get off slowly. But Pepsid can be super supportive. In the long term, you want to just keep it away from your main meal in terms of maybe a half hour or so before to kind of quiet those mast cells, but we're not stopping the production of acid for breaking down your protein. So just what are some of the mast cell supporting supplements? We've done whole presentations on this, but Histo Harmony DAO is a good one. Perilla seed extract and paramine. If you just want a little bit of support for calming mast cells, baking soda can be super supportive, just a little bit in water. Generally, people are looking to get to a quarter teaspoon, an eighth to a quarter of a teaspoon in like an 8-ounce glass of water, can kind of quiet things down. But make sure to work with your practitioner just to figure out kind of what's right with you for you, because some people do well with those, and others, depending on what's going on with you, may be an issue. So DAO, the Histo Harmony, is the only supplement that degrades. DAO is the only supplement that degrades histamine. That's not the only one that's made. So the other histamine blockers and things like that are more blockers versus helping you break it down. So this supplement does that. You want a high quality product with climate controlled storage, and actually Histo Harmony is the only one that I've heard of that has that. It has a little bit of nitrogen the way they package it, so it's actually a pretty strong product because it has that. It keeps the integrity of the product. It can be taken 15 to 20 minutes before your meals. And one sort of pro tip is you can take that at bedtime. If you're having a lot of histamine reactions overnight, we have some people taking it on empty stomach at bedtime to reduce the histamine reactions overnight. Baking soda, which is sodium bicarbonate, it contains about 300 milligrams of sodium for a quarter teaspoon. So if you do have high blood pressure, you may need to avoid that. Talk with your doctor. But sodium is a mast cell stabilizer. And yeah, I was saying we only use about, a little bit, and clean water can kind of quiet and kind of neutralize things. So usually taking 30 minutes away from your meals so it doesn't affect your acid. It's a short-term acting thing, but it can help kind of calm a flare. And it's also low salicylate. So it's usually something everybody has available to them everywhere. Inexpensive.
Yeah, inexpensive. Everyone has it already probably in their cabinet. Okay, I'm going to bring everyone up now and see if we can get like one or two questions in for you guys. Let's see. All right, here we go. Should you work on leaky gut and microbiome before mold detox, or does the mold detox help with those things? So this was kind of going back to that order of operations. There's a level of support and then addressing the mold before we really attack repairing the gut. So Kimberly or Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just say it depends on the person and where they are at. Some people are reacting and can't get stabilized because their gut is super reactive. So we do some support. But until you get to the other side of detox, you can't fully correct some of those chronic things that are going on because you're detoxing through the gut.
Yeah. Okay. I have autonomic dysfunction and MCAS, and I feel like if I eat too late, I sleep awful, ringing in the ears, internal vibrations. Is this related to enteric nervous system, and how do you address this? I don't know. Elle, Kimberly, Alex. Oh, Alex, you're muted.
First question I would have is, are you having a food intolerance reaction? Is this really a mast cell reaction? And if it is, well, that could certainly have an impact on your autonomic nervous system. And, your vagus nerve is necessary for your digestion. And if you're living in a heightened state of fight or flight or freeze, that's going to impair your digestion no matter what. You're also not moving around at night, and moving around can help your digestion as well. So just a couple thoughts.
Yeah.
And I would add that, yes, I mean, the nervous system can do some really interesting things sometimes whenever it's being reactive. And so some of the things we talked about, to help stabilize and everything can be really important. And then one of the things that I do as part of the emotional support coaching is the Safe and Sound protocol. And that can also help some of those specific things, whether it's that may be more like when it happens randomly with ringing, but just in general, that helping with that level of sensitivity.
Yeah.
And all I would add to that is just the internal vibrations really is indicative to mold for many. So I would just make sure you've checked your environment for that. Ringing in the ears can be many things, right? And then looking at your histamine load for what you ate too, because that can cause some of, but the internal vibrations make me wonder a little bit about the mold piece and the nervous system reacting to that in the body.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that. Like we've said, there's 95% of people who come through the clinic have some level of mold, and for some, it's never like the first thing they think about. Like we have people who know they had a past mold exposure and come because we do address it in the body, and then we have people who come and have never even thought about it as a trigger. So I do want to save time to announce the winner of today's live, but I also want to share our exciting announcement. We're now offering 2 tiers of support. So our foundational tier is new. You may have remembered, if you've been following us for a while, that we launched something called the mast cell strategy session back at the end of last year, kind of as a trial to see if these one-time consultations were something that people were finding supportive. And it was basically like an overview of figuring out where you are in the MC360 method and giving you some real actionable steps to kind of take, especially when you may be working with a provider who may not be as literate in mast cell activation syndrome and sensitivity. So we've now turned those sessions into our foundational tier, and you can actually do those multiple times. So maybe you have a practitioner you really enjoy working with, but you are missing a little bit of the stabilization piece or not sure where to go next on your mold detox. So you can now apply to be a foundational client. We also are taking clients international for our foundation tier. So if you are international and haven't been able to work with us in the past, a strategy session may be a great place to start. So when you go to our application page and apply, you'll go through our pre-screening questionnaire. The first one is about the emotional support. So we're now also offering emotional support to both clients and non-clients. And so that first question will be related to, if you're looking for emotional support, you can go just emotional support. You can go right into that application. If you're looking for more than emotional support, you'll go into the other pre-screening questionnaire, and it'll ask you whether or not you want to be advanced or foundational. And then advanced is kind of how we've been doing it traditionally, where you would first meet with a health coach as you're onboarding for a roadmap session, kind of figure out where you are, do an overview of your case, and then go long-term ongoing one-on-one support with either Kimberly or Alex. So we're really excited to be able to offer more people support in this way. So feel free to go check that application out. If you have any questions about it, you can email us at support@mastcell360.com. And today's winner of the giveaway is Joni Smith from Chicago. So Joni, please email us at support@mastcell360.com, and we will make sure that you get access to your course. All right, everyone. I want to just thank you all for being here today. And thank you to our practitioners for taking time out of seeing clients to do this little bit of education and share their wisdom. And we will see you next week. Again, we're going to be talking about the gut and mast cell activation syndrome again. So please feel free to tune in. I believe we're going to have like a Q&A style on that. So look for a post on Facebook later this week to kind of get those questions in ahead of time so we can spend more time on answering those questions for you guys. Thanks so much for being here today.